Shalom. I'm Rabbi Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the webyeshiva.org, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. I'm going to speak about this week's Torah reading, which is Parsha NOACH. And this week's Torah reading talks about the flood that basically destroyed all of civilization except for Noach and his family and the animals that he brought with him into the ark. There are a number of questions I want to discuss very briefly during this short session. First of all, the entire world was destroyed. We know that God has given freedom of choice to people, and people who didn't exercise the freedom of choice in accordance with God's will, they were punished. But what about those who had no ability for freedom of choice? Not only were those who had sinned, who had done wrong, punished, but the entire world was punished. Animate objects and inanimate objects. Even children. Children can't make a decision as to what is right or wrong. Inanimate objects. The flood covered all of the world, above the mountaintops. Why were all these entities destroyed? Second, what was the reason that Noah and his family were saved and allowed to go into the ark, build an ark, and bring with him the various animals that would then sustain life? What was special about Noah? And finally, what can we learn of the relationship between the flood and COVID infection? So let me talk about these things. First of all, let's start with what was happening in the world. The Torah says, when it describes what was taking place, it says, "Vatishaches haaretz lifnei Elokim." The earth was corrupted before God. Vatimale haaretz Hamas, and it was filled with Hamas. Interesting name, because Hamas, of course, is the terrorist group that has committed the horrible massacres on the people of Israel. But Hamas also means just cruelty. And what was the main sin that was done? And the sages say that the main sin that was being done was people were stealing from one another, robbery. What's so great about that? What's so significant about that? And the sages say, because when somebody is stealing, tries to steal from somebody else, it shows that he has no faith in God. He needs to do something illegally instead of having God provide him by legal means what he's entitled to. Okay, so those who were doing the evil things, they had corrupted the earth. They had corrupted themselves. They had a choice to make. They made the wrong choices. So, okay, it's understandable. God can punish them for the wrong choices. But what about them? What about those that didn't have and don't have the ability to make a choice? Children, animals, inanimate objects. Why were they destroyed as well? And the comparison can be made, and this is why I talk about the relationship with COVID. Do you remember a number of years ago when the COVID outbreak first broke out? What were we doing? We were afraid to touch anything. We were afraid that the surface of something would be contaminated. You remember bringing in groceries, and you'd wipe down the groceries. You'd wipe everything that was coming in because you were afraid that the surface was contaminated. And where did that come from? Well, actually, you can look at the modern day hospital. Look at a surgery ward. how careful the doctors and the personnel in that surgery ward are to completely wash their hands each time, to sterilize their hands, to make sure that anything that they come in contact with is not bacterial or cannot infect the patient they're working on. In fact, normally we have a resistance to bacteria. It's called our skin. But what happens if you break down that resistance? If you break down that resistance, you have a cut on your arm, for example, it allows bacteria to come in. Similarly, when we had the COVID scare, and we still have COVID, but when we were afraid to touch anything, afraid to go near anybody, cleaning everything, it was the same situation. We were afraid that if we touched it, it would infect us. So too, the actions, the level of immorality that the people of the flood had fallen into was contagious, and it affected those even who did not do anything. Just like a bacterial infection or a viral infection could infect somebody else, there's an opening, so it infected everything. Everything had to be sterilized, and the flood was God's way of sterilizing the world, because without that it couldn't be sterilized. So there's a connection there. But now we come to Noach. Why Noach? Why was he saved of all the people? So what does the Torah say about Noach? First of all, the end of last week's Parsha, Bereshis, ends with the words, V'Noach motza chen be'enei Hashem. Noach found favor in the eyes of God. And in this week's Parsha begins, the Torah reading begins, Eila told us Noach, these are the generations of Noach. Noach ish tzaddik, he was a righteous person, Tamim hay b'drosov. He was wholehearted, he was perfect in his generation. Eshu Elokim hisalech Noach. God walked with Noach. The word Tamim, perfection. What does that mean? We come across this concept of Tamim in a number of places. We had it in the Torah reading of Parsha Shoftim. And there it says, Tamim tiyeh Hashem Elokecha, you shall be perfect with the Lord your God. And Rashi said, what does that mean? Rashi said there, He's halech imo b'tmimos, walk with God with perfection, but tetzapelo, look at God, below tachkor, and don't search after achratidut. Don't try to be a fortune teller and see why things are happening, but understand that all understand that everything that happens to you, you should receive with perfection. And that concept of a Jew accepting everything without asking questions is the basis and the foundation stone of what a Jew has to do to live your life, that you have total emunah, total faith in God, that everything that happens is from God. Noach realized this. Noach realized this, and the Baal HaTurim, in his commentary on the words that I just said a few minutes ago, said, Es Elokim Yisalech Noach, Noach walked with God. He said the last letters of those words spell the word Chacham, wise man. What was he so wise about? He was wise because he realized that everything that was happening to him was from God. He didn't have to ask for anything else. He knew that God gave him what he needed. And this is the basis of how we can ourselves come into an ark to protect us from all the floods around us. What is our protection? Our ark, our teva, as the ark is called in Hebrew, our protection is emunah. simple faith in God. As it says, Habakkuk talked about the way a tzaddik lives, a righteous person lives with his emunah, with his faith in God. By having faith in God, we will understand, and we will understand that everything that happens to us is what God wants to happen. And we needn't worry. If we have that absolute emunah pshuta, we can live in a teva and be protected from all the vicissitudes of life around us. Thank you for listening on behalf of the webyeshiva.org. I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom.